Impact of Aadhaar on Welfare Program. Reetika Khera. India's ambitious biometric identity documents project, Aadhaar was portrayed as one that would enhance India's welfare efforts by promoting inclusion and reducing corruption. From being a voluntary ID, it has become de facto compulsory for most welfare programs, despite early warnings of its limited role in achieving its stated objectives. Successive governments have ramped up its use. Using a variety of sources, a review of the impact of Aadhaar on welfare programs is presented. It is found that far from being inclusive and reducing corruption, Aadhaar is becoming a tool of exclusion. The government's estimates of saving also do not stand up to scrutiny, and whatever is termed as saving is often the result of denial of legal entitlements. In this current form, the other project undermines the right to life. A little learning is dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. Their shallow draughts intoxicate the brains, and drinking largely sobers us again. Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope aptly describes the origin and the evolution of Unique Identity Project (UID), widely known as Aadhaar, that was initiated to provide each resident of India a unique number linked to his or her biometrics. Among other things, it was meant to lead to great inclusion into welfare programs, reduce corruption in them, and remove intermediaries from the delivery mechanism. Based on the evidence of the source of corruption in programs such as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Public Administration System, Social Security pensions, and the proposed use of UID in them, Khera 2011 concludes that a priori there is a very limited role of Aadhaar in improving their implementation. The government's stated purpose of using Aadhaar in welfare program was unlikely to be fulfilled. The government, however, continued to push for Aadhaar integration in this program. This paper looks at the impact of this Aadhaar integration primarily in Narega, PDS, and SSP. The cases of liquefied petroleum gas subsidy and the proposed application of Aadhaar in the mid-day meal MDM schemes are also briefly discussed. This paper relies on variety of evidence, quantitative data from primary field studies, secondary data from the government portals, figures obtained through queries made in the Right of to Information Act, and the responses to the question in the Parliament. Beside this, news reports are used to highlight emerging issues for which official data are currently not available. What emerges is as follow: 1. The extent of corruption in this program varies, but even when it is high, there has been a declining predating Aadhaar integration. For example, Narega and PDS. Two, Aadhaar integration cannot solve the major forms of corruption that continue, primarily quantity fraud. 3. Far from improving the implementation of this program, there are signs of Aadhaar integration causing serious damage. 4. Based on its own data, the government saving estimates due to Aadhaar integration are highly questionable. In a nutshell, the gains are limited and the tentative, whereas the damage is certain and the possibly substantial. Given this, the government's decision to make Aadhaar mandatory for a range of welfare programs is a cause of alarm. The right to privacy challenge to the Aadhaar project has received a lot of attention, but the right to life challenge to its thus far not been adequately highlighted. This paper attempt to fill that gap. Background: leak of an identity document. The proponents of the UIT project claimed that a large number of Indians were denied welfare benefits because people did not have any identity documents. This assertion, which was not really supported with evidence, provided the initial justification for the project. If, as the government claimed, the coverage of the existing form of the ID was incomplete, then those should have been expanded to ensure wider coverage. This was rejected on the grounds that the existing databases were seriously flawed. The Unique Identification Authority of India UIDAI was set up to organize enrollment and generation of Aadhaar numbers apart from the National Population Register. There are two ways of enrolling for Aadhaar number from the UIDAI directly, one using a proof of ID and the proof of address from a list including passport, ration card, voter ID card drawn up by UIDAI. 2. Using the introducer system. This was set up keeping in mind those people who were lacking in the pre-existing ID. Khera. According to a response to Right to Information query in 2015, only 0.03% of Aadhaar numbers were issued through the introducer system. The rest were issued to those who submitted two IDs and through the NPR, raising questions about the basic premise of Aadhaar project. Note that the UIDI used those very flawed IDs to enroll for Aadhaar that it had rejected as error ridden. This circulatory has gone largely unnoticed. It has serious implication for the reliability of Aadhaar database being independent of the biometric data, fingerprint, photograph, and iris scan. The accuracy of demographic data, for example, name, date of birth, and the Aadhaar database is especially important now as it is becoming the basis of claiming benefit. There has been no independent audit of database, so we do not know to what extent there are errors, but media reports routinely highlight them. The promoters of UID also succeeded in creating the impression that Aadhaar would guarantee access to benefit and the Mai Bap Sarkar culture and enable people to assert their rights state structures. Here again the UIDAI was informed exclusion is largely the result of weak targeting mechanism, identification of the poor, and the imposition of sting caps of coverage arising from budgetary constraints. For instance, in the PDS, statewide central commitment was fixed at the poverty rate estimated using National Sample Survey Office data from 1993-94 until the passage of the National Food Security Act in 2013. Caps were applied in the several schemes, for example, for pension, housing. And the possession of an additional ID cannot solve the problem of exclusion unless these caps are relaxed or identification method improved. Instead, as discussed subsequently, Aadhaar is becoming a tool of exclusion, the last hurdle after all the pre-eligibility hurdles have been crossed. For some, enrolling for Aadhaar has not been easy. Kerry Ward Digital 2007. Corruption. Another justification for the Aadhaar project was its purported role in the reducing corruption in welfare programs such as Narega, PDS, and pension. Fraud in these programs can be broadly categorized as eligibility fraud, identity fraud, and the quantity fraud. Eligibility fraud refers to the inclusion of a person who do not meet official eligibility criteria. For example, by presenting faked supporting documents. Quantity fraud takes the form of eligible person receiving less than their entitlements. For instance, under selling in the PDS, people are forced to sign off on more than what they will actually get in MDM. It could refer to the dilution of prescribed nutrition norms, for instance, not following the menu at all and giving vertical. Identity fraud refers to the case where one person's benefits are claimed fraudulently by another, and the PDS and official may defraud the system by getting a ration card and the name of a non-existent person or dead person. ghost, or getting two cards when they are entitled to only one duplicates. In the MDM scheme, identity fraud can take the form of inflated attendance, so where costs are booked for more children than are actually being served meal. In programs such as Narega and SSP, which provide support in the cash rather than kind, a big protection against identity fraud comes from using the banking system to transfer fund. This eliminates by the large the possibility of identity fraud so long as the banking norms are observed. Biometric technology, to the extent that is reliable, can help eliminate identity fraud, but as a limited role, if any, in reducing quality fraud or eligibility fraud. There is limited evidence on the magnitude of each type of the fraud, but available evidence suggests that the quantity fraud is a bigger problem. Khera. Therefore, contrary to the government's undertaking, understanding Adhar can only play a marginal role in the reducing corruption. Adhar in welfare. The following sections examine the evidence on the Adhar integration in four important welfare programs: the PDS, Narega, SSP, and MDM scheme. For each scheme, three broad themes are examined. Recent evidence on the corruption, the government's claim about the Adhar's contribution to improve the implementation of these schemes, and emerging evidence on the disruption due to Aadhaar integration. Aadhaar integration is planned in two ways. One, Aadhaar seeding refers to the adding a data field from the Aadhaar number to the software management information system, or MIS, that is used to administrate these programs. This is supposed to be a simple one-off activity, and it is not quite as simple as it sounds. For each scheme, each entitled person needs to be informed of what is needed. A range of supporting document may be required. The number may be correctly entered. Further, in many cases, re-enrollment of biometrics has been necessary as fingerprints or the irises can become outdated. Aadhaar seeding can help with eliminating identity fraud by weeding out bogus beneficiaries. For example, deed, non-existent person. Once 100% Aadhaar seeding is achieved, beneficiaries in the MIS without Aadhaar numbers are deemed to be bogus and are deleted. Two Aadhaar-based biometric authentication. ABBA refers to the practice of installing a point-of-scale machine equipped with the fingerprint reader and the authenticating a person each time she assesses her entitlement. For instance, at the time of purchase of PDS grain, each month, one person listed on the ration card needs to authenticate themselves. Similarly, for pension, elderly person must go to the point of delivery, for example, post office or gram panchayat office, to authenticate themselves. ABBA serves the roles of signature. In the pre-Aadhaar days, ABBA on the POS machines is currently a monthly activity, so each of its associated technologies correct Aadhaar seeding, mobile connectivity, electricity, functional POS machines, and the UIDAI server and fingerprint recognition need to work for a person to get their entitlements. Public distribution system. The PDS provides subsidized ration, mainly wheat and rice, to the entitled household through a network of the PDS outlet. Corruption has been a serious problem in the front of the identity fraud. For example, duplicates, ghosts, non-existent, and quantity fraud, that is underselling, eligibility fraud, and the exclusion errors have also plugged the PDS. According to the one estimate, half of the poorest did not have a below poverty line BPL ration card in the early 2000. Dredge and Khera 2010. There are other problems in the PDS too. For example, overcharging, quality of grain that are not well documented. The latest year of which estimate of the corruption are available in 2011-12. These estimates are made by matching administrative data on offtake by states with PDS purchased by household reported in the nationally representative surveys such as NSSO and Indian Human Development Survey ISDS by 2011-12. A reduction in leakage was well established in a handful of states such as Chhattisgarh, Odisha. For instance, in Chhattisgarh, leakage declined from 50% in 2004 to 5 to around 10% 2011 to 12. In the same period, according to NSSO data, all India leakage declined from 54% to 42%, and according to ISDS data, from 49 to 32%. With the passage of NFSA in 2013, the coverage of the PDS was to be expanded to 75% of the population in rural areas, 50% in the urban areas. The act was mandated the drawing up of a fresh list of entitled household. Two categories of the household were created: priority, with the per capita entitlement of the 5 kg person per month, and the Antyodaya, 35 kg per household per month. Puri. The initial evidence from a field survey so far suggested that the rollout of the NFSA has led to a further reduction in leakage. In the states like Madhya Pradesh and West Bengal, initial evidence suggests that the gains from the rollout of the NFSA have been dramatic. Entitled households now get more than 95% of their entitlements in these states. Khera. Close on the heels of the implementation of NFSA, orders for Adhaar integration in the PDS were issued on the 7th November. Different states are at different stages of accomplish this. A handful of the states, Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, and Telangana, at least have moved to a more less 100% integrated PDS, including the use of POS machines with the ABBA each month. The effect of Aadhaar integration are perhaps best documented in PDS. Identity fraud. The extent of identity fraud before the rollout of NFSA was not documented. The National Institute of Public Finance and Policy cost benefit analysis also cites the lack of data on identity fraud as the reason for resorting to ad hoc assumptions on this. The government relied at best on anecdotal evidence of the ghost and duplicates to make its case for Aadhaar integration. After the rollout of the NFSA, the evidence suggests that that there is hardly any identity fraud in those states that use socio-economic caste census data. In states like Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal, the preparation of a new ration card list was on the basis of the SECC. For example, the SECC itself, if anything, suffered from exclusion errors. Exclusion errors. For example, some hamlets were not covered for individuals in household did not get enumerated. Another state which did not use SECCV do not know the extent of identity fraud. As mentioned earlier, 100% Aadhaar seeding can help detect identity fraud by linking each person's Aadhaar number to the name in the PDS database, and those names are cards that are without an Aadhaar number can be deleted. The government claimed that 14,000 crore has been saved in the PDS due to deletion of 2.33 crore ration cards up to 2016-17 and better targeting the beneficiaries. Government of India, 2017. Questions answered in the parliament says that these claims are bogus. Data presented in the parliament is the most credible source of information on deleted card. It is clear that what the government is referring to it is ineligible cards, that is eligibility fraud. The answer is worth quoting at length. The exercise of deletion of bogus and ineligible cards and the inclusion of eligible families in a continuous process, and the state government are to periodically carry out the same. As per the information received from the state and UT government, as a result of continuous exercise of reviewing the list of the ration card, and total number of 2.33 crore ration cards have been deleted during the period of 2016 to 13 to 16. This suggests that all the deletions are due to ineligibility. Digitization of Aadhaar integration cannot eliminate eligibility fraud. Eligibility is determined by the criteria notified by state. For instance, living in the mud house caste status Aadhaar does not provide this information. The data refers to the period during which the NFSA was rolled out, which further strengthens the possibility that the deletion were due to the new ration card list being drawn up. To illustrate, let us look at the data of Karnataka. In 2014, the state deleted 40% of all ration cards, and in 2015, 7% of the ration cards were deleted. The total number of the cards in the state, however, declined from 1.31 crore to 1.29 crore. That is only 2%. Thus, though a large number of the cards were deleted in 2014, almost an equal number were also added. This is true for the all India numbers too. The overall reduction of cards in circulation is only 6.6%. By focusing on deleted cards, the government has sought to distract attention from the real issue. There is another problem with these numbers. In all states except Bengal, ration cards are issued for each household. In West Bengal, uh, each household get a ration card. Therefore, the reporting unit is not the same. However, in government record, the difference in unit is not taken into account. This has the effect of inflating the number of cards deleted. Finally, the large number of the decision predate Aadhaar integration order of November 2014. By April 2016, only half of the all ration cards have been Aadhaar linked, raising further question about the Aadhaar's role in the detecting these bogus and ineligible cards. Quantity fraud. Quantity fraud in the PDS refers primarily to the underselling. The manual system cardholders were told to sign off authenticator on full purchase even though they may be given less. For instance, reviewing 32 kg after signing for 35 kg. With the introduction of PO machine and ABBA, the register has been replaced with the POS, but the understanding continues more or less as before. Several fields studies in the Delhi, Shagun Priya, Nayak and Nehra, Gujarat Yadav, Rajasthan Yadav, Khera, Jharkhand corroborate this. One form of the quantity fraud that ABBA may help with is the skipping of month in some states. For example, Bihar and Jharkhand, apart from taking kati each month, dealers also siphon off entire month's worth of rations. Similarly, in many state, dealers could divert leftover rations to the open market. The introduction of ABBA can put to an end of to skipping and leftover skipping used to be rampant in the several North Indian states, but there is evidence of the decline in the recent years pre-Aadhaar. Exclusion, denial, higher transaction costs. In a handful of the states, ABBA is mandatory each month at POS machine in the installed at the ration shop. As discussed earlier, ABBA has no role in the stopping identity fraud that only requires 100% Aadhaar seeding and can do little to stop quantity fraud. ABBA is contributing to exclusion from the PDS in a number of ways. One families or individual without Aadhaar numbers cannot register, so they cannot get the ration to which they are legally entitled. In Delhi, for instance, without Aadhaar names are not included on the NFSA card. Priya. The central government directive requires that as long as many one member's Aadhaar numbers is linked, everyone listed on the ration card will get green. While Jharkhand follows this rule, in Delhi and Andhra Pradesh, the quantity of ration provided is according to the number of Aadhaar numbers that are linked to the ration card. Missing Aadhaar numbers means ration is cut. Two outright exclusion can also be because no member of the family is POS-able. A POS-able person is due one who is Aadhaar linked and whose fingerprints are recorded by POS machine. Biometric failures have been recorded in the states using Aadhaar as well as non-Aadhaar biometrics. Apart from these field studies, question is, and Parliament corroborated some of these opponents, and the government stated that in Rajasthan in February 2017, 78% of the NFSA beneficiaries have been provided with through POS transactions, and it is claimed there that there were alternative arrangements, link, one-time password or OTP for the others. The government admitted that the disruption of in the Aadhaar authentication services in Rajasthan were on account of inadequate server capacity of the Rajasthan government, insufficient lease line capacity, poor mobile signal at POS, incorrect seeding of Aadhaar number in PDS database. Official data from Rajasthan shows that from July 2016 to 2006, between 25% and 30% of 1 crore cardholder in the state, accounting for 12%, 35% of allotted grains, do not buy grains from the PDS outlets. Khalid, forthcoming report similar results using the Jharkhand Food Data Portal. Earlier studies shows that the demand for PDS grains is high, and that eligible household would not purchase PDS grain only under very compelling circumstances, like when the entire family being out in particular month. The state food portal does not show whatever those who did not buy in a particular month tried at all later on. Apart from outright exclusion, ABBs leading to sporadic declination and higher transactions cost. For example, only those members whose Aadhaar number is seated in the PDS database can withdraw rations. Technology failures like connectivity, figures of fingerprints, authentication server issues also contribute to these problems. A recent survey of 900 households in a rural Jharkhand corroborated the finding that when ABBA works for entitled household, it becomes the big higher transaction cross and little protection against quantity fraud. Those who are excluded by ABBA tend to be the most vulnerable, early, who cannot walk without any young children. National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. The Magnarega was passed in 2005 and guarantees 100 days of work per household to any adult willing to work. As per the Act, at least 70% of the total expenditure is on wage, and the rest on material corruption is observed in both wage and material expenditure. In 2008, the central government made it necessary for the base to be paid into bank and the post office amount.